If your neighbor's house has been empty for months, and you suddenly see someone walking past its dark windows at 3 in the morning, move. I learned that the hard way because the someone pacing through the vacant house next to mine wasn't a person at all, and the night it whispered my name, everything I thought I understood about fear changed forever. My name's Evan Collins, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes outside Tucson, Arizona. 1-story homes, pickup trucks in driveways, stray desert cats wandering the fences, the usual Southwest vibe. To my right is House 27, a small stucco home that's been abandoned since the owner passed away last year. The yard is dead, burnt by the sun. The for sale sign leans to one side like it's giving up. No lights, no movement, no reason for anyone to be inside, at least, that's what I thought. 2 weeks ago at exactly 3:11 a.m., something shifted in that house, and my life hasn't felt normal since. It started with lights. I woke up one night and noticed a faint glow leaking through the blinds of House 27. I sat up, confused. Nobody had the keys. Nobody had moved in, yet the living room was lit like someone was walking inside with a lantern. The next night, the light came on again, same exact time. This time, I saw movement. A tall shadow drifted behind the blinds, slow and careful, as if it was studying the room around it. I watched from my bedroom window, frozen, but the night after that was worse. At around 3 a.m., I was taking out a trash bag when I heard noise from the vacant house. Footsteps, heavy ones, slow, crossing the wooden floor inside. I stepped closer to the fence and stopped breathing. Something brushed against the blinds, a long shape, almost reaching the height of the window. Then, out of nowhere, a cold whisper slid over the fence and crept into my ear. Evan. My heart nearly exploded. I dropped the trash bag and stumbled backward. No one should know my name. No one should be inside that house. But the street was empty. No footsteps. No wind. Just the dead, heavy silence of the desert at night. 2 nights later, I had my first direct encounter. I was locking my front door when I noticed something standing at the end of my driveway. The street lamp above it flickered in and out, like even the light didn't want to show what it was. It was tall, too tall. Its arms hung straight down like ropes, and its head stayed perfectly still, pointing toward my house. I moved slowly to the peephole. My breath fogged the metal around it. When the street lamp sparked again, I saw its face, or rather the disturbing absence of one. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just smooth, stretched skin like a melted mask. And yet, somehow, it still looked like it was staring straight at me. Then it tilted its head, fast and unnatural, as if it snapped a bone doing it. Without any mouth, it whispered, "Evan, let me in." I stumbled back, knocking into the wall. When I looked again, the driveway was empty. I checked the security camera footage the next morning. All I found was static during the exact minute I saw the thing. A few nights later, I tried watching House 27 from my backyard. The Arizona wind was cold, carrying that strange, metallic smell right before a storm. A creak echoed across the fence, then another, then a slow dragging sound. At 3:07 a.m., a light turned on inside House 27. This time, the shadows inside weren't pacing. They were facing the window, waiting. I stepped forward, squinting through the slats of the fence. That's when I saw it, an eye, just one, wedged perfectly between the wooden boards, wide, bloodshot, staring directly into mine like it had been searching for me in the dark. I froze, couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The eye blinked a slow, unnatural blink, then vanished. The light inside the vacant house switched off instantly. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I whipped around toward my house. The doorknob was turning on its own, metal clicking softly. I bolted around the yard, ran inside, locked every window, every door, every latch. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped my keys twice. When the sheriff deputy finally showed up, he checked the yard, checked the vacant house, checked everything. No signs of forced entry. He said, "Probably the wind." the wind doesn't twist doorknobs. And it definitely doesn't stare at you through fences. The worst night came 4 days later. At exactly 3:03 a.m., I shot awake to the sound of a door slamming open. It echoed across the entire street, a sharp crack through the cold night air. I ran to the window. House 27's front door was hanging wide open, pitch black inside, like a mouth waiting to swallow something whole. Then something stepped out, tall, slender, moving wrong joints bending too loosely as if bones were optional. Its blank face turned toward my house with slow, deliberate intention, and right then, the whisper came, but I didn't hear it from the street. I heard it inside my bedroom, right behind me. Ian, you saw me. Every nerve in my body burned. My legs nearly gave out. I turned around. Nothing. No figure. No shadow. Just the faint sound of breathing, not mine, drifting through the room. When I looked back toward my front hallway, my door was open, a perfect 2 inches. I moved out the next morning. Didn't take half my stuff. Didn't care. I checked into a cheap motel off Route 86, the kind with buzzing neon signs and the smell of old carpet soaking into the walls. I thought I'd be safe at least for a night or two. I was wrong. Last night, around 3:10 a.m., I heard a whisper outside my motel window. Close, too close. It fogged the glass from the outside. Ian, I found you. I don't know what that thing is. I don't know why it chose the vacant house. I don't know why it knows my name, but I finally understand the truth. It was never trapped in the house. It was waiting, and now, it won't stop until it has my face. I first saw her at 2:11 a.m. staring at me from the attic window of the house across the street. Her face pressed so tightly against the glass that her cheekbones looked bent inward. At first, I honestly thought she was dying or hurt. That attic was supposed to be empty. My neighbor, Mark Larson, lived alone, no wife, no girlfriend, no family. But when I lifted my phone to call the police, the woman lowered her jaw until it hung halfway down her chest, and the attic light snapped off. That was the moment I realized. Whatever I saw wasn't asking for help. It was warning me. My name is Caleb Parker, and last winter I moved to a small town in central Idaho, just outside a place called Stanley, one of those mountain towns where every house sits far apart, surrounded by pine trees and endless cold air. I rented a small two-story place off Route 21, close to a gas station, a sheriff's substation, and a quiet row of old homes built in the 70s. When I first got there, everything felt peaceful. No blanketed roads, the smell of firewood, distant cars humming down the highway. I worked remotely, did evening walks, waved to neighbors. The house across from me looked like any other northern Idaho home. Pale blue siding, narrow attic vents, an old Ford truck in the driveway. Nothing about it seemed strange, not until the scratching began. It started my second night. I was up late working, and I heard something faint, like fingers dragging across wood. It wasn't inside my house. It was echoing from somewhere across the street. I stepped to my living room window. The whole neighborhood was swallowed in pitch black night, except for one dim street lamp flickering over the snow. Then I heard it again, a sirach, but this time it came from above me, from my own attic. I froze. I didn't even use the attic. I didn't even have the ladder pulled down. I stood beneath the ceiling, staring up, trying to convince myself it was just the wind shifting roof tiles, but deep down, that didn't feel right. Idaho winter nights are still, suffocating, quiet. A few hours later, I saw her for the first time. That same attic window from Mark's house, just barely glowing behind the blinds, and her silhouette, unmoving, watching my home. The next morning, I asked Mark casually if he had someone living with him. He froze mid-step. No, no, I don't. His voice cracked. He didn't look at the attic once. 2 nights after that, things escalated. At around 1:30 8:30 a.m., I was brushing my teeth when I caught something in the mirror, a shape behind me in the dark kitchen window. I turned fast, heart slamming, nothing. But then the noise started, fast, frantic crawling, skittering across my roof like a person on all fours, racing toward the back of my house. I backed away, almost slipping on the tile. Then came the whisper, right outside the bathroom window, inches from my head. "Caleb, let me in." I went to the living room window and peeked through a crack in the curtains, and there she was, standing dead, still in the middle of my yard, pale skin almost glowing in the moonlight, hair hanging down in wet strands. Arms too long, fingers dragging against the snow. Her jaw dangled unnaturally low like something had broken it years ago and it never healed. But the worst part, she wasn't looking at my house, she was looking at Mark's attic, like she belonged to it. The next morning, I stormed across the street. Mark opened the door half awake, smelling like old coffee. "I saw someone in your attic," I said, "a woman." His face instantly drained of color. He looked over his shoulder, lowered his voice, and whispered, "You didn't see her, no, just stay inside at night, please." Then he slammed the door. That was the moment I knew he was hiding something dangerous. That night, I barely slept. At around 3 a.m., the power went out, total darkness. I grabbed a flashlight and checked the breaker. The air inside the house felt colder than the outside snow. When I reached the hallway, something moved at the far end, not walking, crawling, slow, deliberate. Long fingers curled around the corner first, then her pale face slid into view, jaw still hanging, eyes wide and dead. She crawled toward me, bones cracking with every movement. "Caleb," she rasped, "you look like him." I ran, bolted out the front door into the freezing air, slipping across my driveway. I sprinted straight to Mark's house and pounded on the door. He yanked me inside, locked it immediately, and dragged a heavy dresser in front of the door. "Is she in your house?" he hissed. She was crawling toward me. I gasped, "What is she?" Mark didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he pointed up toward his attic. "My ex-wife, Claire, she died up there 3 years ago, but she never left." He took me to the attic ladder with trembling hands. The moment he pulled it down, a foul, cold air poured out, like the smell of rot soaked into old insulation. I climbed first. The attic was pitch black except for my weak flashlight. Boxes, clothes, old newspapers, but no woman. Then something breathed behind me, slow, deep, hungry. I turned. Claire was inches from my face, her jaw nearly touching her collarbone, her eyes black and furious. Before I could react, she lunged. Teeth scraped my cheek, hands grabbed my shoulders. I fell backward down the ladder, hitting the floor hard, Mark screaming above me. Claire descended the ladder upside down, her limbs bending wrong, crawling toward us like a spider. Mark shoved me toward the back door. "Go, she already chose you." I ran through the snow, slipped, got up again, and sprinted all the way to my car. I drove straight to the sheriff's station, shaking so hard that I could barely speak, when deputies went to check Mark's house. He was gone, the attic was empty, no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no blood. But they did find one thing, a single wet handprint on the inside of my car door, long fingers, too long. Ever since that night, every time I walk past a window, even in broad daylight, I feel the same cold breath on my neck. She didn't stay in Mark's attic. She didn't stay in my house. She followed me. And sometimes around 2 or 3 a.m., when the town goes quiet, I hear her in the crawl space above my ceiling, SCRRAH, waiting for the perfect moment to open her jaw again. The first time it knocked, I thought it was a person. The second time, I realized it wasn't knocking on the door. It was knocking from inside the walls of the abandoned cabin beside mine, and the third time, it knocked on my window. My name is Logan Reed, and in 2022, I rented a small, outdated cabin outside Boone, North Carolina. I was trying to save money, get away from the city, and focus on freelance work. The place sat on a narrow gravel road surrounded by pine trees, maybe 12 minutes from town, just past a faded green sign that read Watauga County Line. The cabin next to mine looked abandoned, boards on the windows, a collapsed porch rail, a rusted satellite dish hanging sideways. My landlord said it hadn't been lived in for years. But my elderly neighbor down the road, an old-timer named Mr. Harland, warned me the day I moved in, "If you hear banging from that basement next door," he said, pointing a shaky finger, "ignore it. Don't go near it. Don't look, don't answer." I laughed, thinking he was being dramatic or superstitious. That was before the nights started changing, before something climbed out of that basement and found me. The banging started on my second night, sometime around 1 a.m. At first it was distant, dull, like someone dropping lumber, thud, thud, thud. I assumed it was the wind slamming loose boards, but the next night the sound got sharper, more deliberate, like fists hitting old wood. Then it became rhythmic. 3 slow hits, a pause. Then 2 more, almost like knocking. By the 4th night, I couldn't sleep. The banging was louder than ever, echoing through the trees, bouncing off the siding of my own cabin. My coffee mugs rattled. My bedroom window shook. What bothered me most wasn't the noise. It was the pattern. It sounded like the thing in the basement was thinking. One evening, after getting groceries at a roadside Food Lion, I saw something new. The basement window of the abandoned cabin, normally pitch black, was glowing faintly, a warm, flickering orange light, like a candle. There were no utilities, no electricity, nothing, yet there it was, and the banging stopped completely. The night after that, I heard footsteps crunching leaves around my cabin, slow, dragging steps, circling the building as the wind carried the smell of wet pine. Every so often, something tall would block the moonlight through my blinds. That's when the real fear began. The first encounter happened around 3 a.m. I woke up to the sound of deep breathing, raspy, uneven, almost wet. It came from the living room. I froze. The breathing grew louder, closer, until it was right outside my bedroom door, then stopped. When the sun came up, I found muddy footprints across my floor, not boots, not shoes, bare human, like feet. But longer, wider, and the toes were spread unnaturally far apart. A few days later, during a heavy fog that rolled over the woods, I saw it for the first time. I stepped out onto my porch and caught movement between the trees. Something tall, extremely tall, was leaning against a pine trunk, its head turned toward me. The fog distorted it, but I saw enough. A stretched shape, at least 7 feet tall, arms long enough to reach its knees, skin pale and uneven, like dried clay, no clothes, no hair, just long limbs, and a face that didn't seem to belong on a living thing. It tilted its head as if studying me. I backed inside immediately and locked every deadbolt. That night, it came closer. Around midnight, my front porch boards creaked, slowly, carefully, like someone testing which ones made noise. Then I heard whispering, not words, more like a mouth trying to remember how sound worked. Breathy, halting, repeated attempts at forming a single shape of a word. It whispered again, closer this time, right outside my living room window. Log, Aten, Luog, In. It was trying to say my name. My chest tightened. I crouched behind the couch, holding my breath while the creature dragged its fingers across the siding, light, curious strokes, like it was feeling the structure. Then came the softest knock on the window. Just one tap. I didn't look. I couldn't. By dawn, it was gone, but something was left behind. A smudged, greasy face, brent on the glass, too large, too narrow, the eye spacing all wrong. The next day, I drove straight to the Watauga County Sheriff's office, where a deputy listened politely until I mentioned the abandoned cabin. His expression shifted. "You're renting next to that place?" he asked. "Man, that property's been trouble for years. Reports of squatters, weird noises. Last guy who rented up there moved out in 3 days. I asked what was in the basement. he just shook his head. That place ain't right. Everything came to a head one stormy night, when rain was beating so hard on the roof it sounded like gravel. I was halfway through packing my things to leave when the power went out. The woods went completely silent. Then the knocking came back, but not from next door. It came from under my floor. One slow hit, then another, the same rhythm the basement had. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, as the knocks grew violent, shaking dust from the floorboards. Something was moving beneath my cabin, crawling upward. The boards began to bow, wood creaking, nails whining. Then, with a tearing rip, the creature's arm broke through the floor. Long, pale, jointed wrong, fingers bending backward. I screamed and bolted out the front door, sprinting into the woods without thinking. Rain stung my face. Branches ripped at my clothes. Behind me, I heard it breaking through more boards, climbing out, standing tall. I didn't look back, not even when I heard it following, heavy steps slamming the soaked earth gaining on me. I reached my car, slid across the wet gravel, dove inside and locked the doors. Something huge slammed onto the trunk. The entire car rocked. It leaned down to the back window. I could hear it breathing. Then, in that same broken voice, Luug, I peeled out onto the road, tires spraying mud, engine screaming down Highway 321 toward Boone. The woods swallowed the creature behind me, or so I thought. I moved 3 states away within a week, South Carolina, then Tennessee, then Virginia. Each time I told myself distance meant safety. Each time I tried to start over. But 2 months later, in a rental outside Roanoke, I woke at 2:14 a.m. to a familiar sound, tap, just one, at my bedroom window. I pulled the curtains back slowly. In the darkness, a tall outline stood perfectly still against the woods. It had followed me. It had learned my scent, my voice, my face. And then, through the glass, Luog, the knocking hasn't stopped since. I don't think it ever will.